Kevin Sawyer's calloused hands gripped a cold beer as he surveyed his backyard. Friends and family milled about, paper plates laden with barbecue and potato salad. It was his 45th birthday, but something felt off. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the neatly trimmed lawn. Kevin's steely blue eyes narrowed as he caught sight of his wife Miranda. She was laughing too loudly at something their neighbor, Noelle Morrison, had said. Her hand lingered on Noelle's arm a beat too long. Kevin's jaw tightened. He'd known Miranda for 20 years, been married to her for 17. He knew her tells. The way her eyes darted away when she lied. The slight tremor in her voice when she was hiding something. And right now, every instinct honed by years in construction management was screaming that something was very wrong. He drained his beer and headed for the cooler, nodding at acquaintances as he passed. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Miranda lean in close to whisper something to Noelle. Noelle's hand brushed the small of her back. Kevin's fingers tightened around the neck of his fresh beer bottle. He wanted to march over there, to demand answers. But no, not here, not now. He'd confront her later, when the guests were gone. When their 16-year-old son Zach wasn't around to witness whatever ugliness might unfold. "Hey, Kevin," his coworker, Tom, called out. "Great party, man. How's it feel to be halfway to 90? Kevin forced a smile. "Like I need another beer. You want one?" As the party wound down, Kevin found himself in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher. Miranda breezed in, her cheeks flushed from wine and laughter. "Need any help, birthday boy?" she asked, her tone light. Kevin straightened, fixing her with a hard stare. "What's going on with you and Noelle?" Miranda's smile faltered for just a moment before she recovered. "What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb, Miranda. I saw you two out there, whispering, touching. What's going on?" Miranda's eyes flashed with defiance. The mask of the dutiful wife slipped away, revealing something cold and unfamiliar beneath. "He's been more of a husband to me than you ever were in our 17 years of marriage," she spat. The words hit Kevin like a physical blow. Before he could respond, a new voice joined the fray. "Dad, don't bother asking questions. He's been spending more nights here than you." Kevin turned to see Zach standing in the doorway, his young face twisted with a mixture of anger and pain. The boy's words hung in the air, heavy with accusation and betrayal. "Zach," Miranda started, her voice suddenly soft. "Honey, it's not what you think." "Save it, Mom," Zach cut her off. "I'm not stupid. I've seen the texts. I've heard the phone calls. How could you do this to Dad?" In that moment, Kevin's world imploded. The carefully constructed facade of his life, the happy marriage, the stable home, crumbled around him. Rage boiled up inside him, threatening to overflow. With a voice that sounded calmer than he felt, Kevin addressed the remaining guests. "Party's over, folks. Thanks for coming, but it's time to go." People began to file out, murmuring confused goodbyes. But Noelle, emboldened by alcohol and arrogance, refused to leave. "Come on, Kev," Noelle slurred, swaying slightly. "Don't be like that. We're all friends here, right?" Kevin said nothing. He turned and walked to the garage, his movements deliberate and controlled. When he returned, he was holding a baseball bat. Noelle's eyes widened. He stumbled backward, nearly tripping over his own feet in his haste to get away. Kevin watched, bat in hand, as Noelle ran down the driveway and disappeared into the night. The remaining guests left in stunned silence, shooting worried glances over their shoulders as they hurried to their cars. In the aftermath, Kevin sat at the kitchen table, staring at nothing. Miranda had stormed off to their bedroom, slamming the door behind her. Zach had retreated to his room as well, leaving Kevin alone with his thoughts. He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he pored over financial records, bank statements, and credit card bills. By the time the sun rose, casting its pale light through the kitchen windows, Kevin had a clear picture of what had been happening under his nose. Miranda stumbled into the kitchen around 9 a.m., her hair disheveled and her eyes bloodshot. She made a beeline for the coffee pot, pointedly ignoring Kevin. "What's all this?" she asked finally, gesturing at the papers spread across the table. Kevin's voice was ice when he responded. "Divorce papers. I've already called my lawyer." Miranda's hangover seemed to evaporate instantly. She sneered at him, her pretty features twisting into something ugly. You think it'll be that easy? I'll take you for everything you're worth. I wouldn't count on that, Kevin replied, sliding over a stack of financial records. I've been tracking your errands and Noel's sudden influx of cash. Embezzlement's a serious crime, Miranda. The color drained from Miranda's face. For a moment, fear flashed in her eyes. But then her mask of defiance slipped back into place. You can't prove anything. Kevin's smile was wolfish. Watch me. Miranda opened her mouth to retort, but was cut off by the sound of the front door slamming open. Noel burst into the kitchen, his face red with anger. You threatening Miranda, Kevin? Big mistake, Noel growled. Kevin stood his ground, squaring his shoulders. Despite the turmoil of the past 24 hours, he felt oddly calm. The mistake was yours, Noel. Both of you. Noel lunged forward, throwing a wild punch. But Kevin, hardened by years of physical labor on construction sites, easily deflected the blow. In one smooth motion, he grabbed Noel's arm and twisted it behind his back, forcing the other man to his knees. Listen carefully, Kevin said, his voice low and deadly calm. I've got evidence of your little scheme. You've got one chance to come clean, or I'm taking it all to the police. From the doorway, Miranda watched the scene unfold. The gravity of their situation was finally sinking in. She had gambled everything on this affair, on the promise of excitement and wealth that Noel had dangled in front of her. Now, faced with the consequences of her actions, she realized just how badly she had miscalculated. Kevin released Noel, who scrambled to his feet, rubbing his sore arm. The two men stared at each other, the air thick with tension. You've got 24 hours, Kevin said. After that, I start making phone calls. To the police, to your boss, to everyone. Noel glanced at Miranda, panic evident in his eyes. Without another word, he turned and fled from the house. In the silence that followed, Kevin turned to his wife, the woman he had loved, trusted, built a life with. Now, looking at her, he felt nothing but contempt. I want you out of this house by tomorrow, he said. You can stay with your sister, or with Loverboy for all I care. But you're not staying here. What about Zach? Miranda asked, her voice small. Zach stays with me, Kevin replied. Unless you want to explain to a judge why an embezzler and adulterer should have custody. Miranda's shoulders slumped in defeat. Without another word, she turned and headed upstairs to pack her things. Kevin sat back down at the kitchen table, surrounded by the evidence of his wife's betrayal. He felt drained, but also strangely liberated. The truth was out now. He heard footsteps on the stairs and looked up to see Zach enter the kitchen. The boy's eyes were red-rimmed, his face pale. Without a word, Kevin stood and pulled his son into a tight embrace. As they stood there in the kitchen, the morning sun streaming through the windows, Kevin felt a glimmer of hope. His marriage was over, his trust shattered, but he still had his son. He still had his integrity, and he had the truth. Whatever came next, he would face it head-on, just like he always had. Kevin's mind raced as he tried to process the events of the past 24 hours. He needed a plan, a way to protect himself and Zach from the fallout of Miranda and Noel's betrayal. Zach, he said, his voice gentle but firm. I need you to tell me everything you know. When did this start? What have you seen or heard? Zach slumped into a kitchen chair, a gesture so like Kevin's own that it made his heart ache. It's been going on for months, Dad. At least 6, maybe more. I started noticing little things at first. Mom being on her phone all the time, laughing at texts. Then I overheard a phone call one night when you were working late. Kevin nodded, encouraging his son to continue. She was talking about money, about how they needed to be careful. I didn't understand at first, but then I saw Noel leaving the house early one morning when you were out of town for that big project in Roanoke. Kevin's fists clenched at his sides, but he kept his voice steady. You did good, son. I know it must have been hard, keeping this to yourself. Zach looked up, his eyes shining with unshed tears. I wanted to tell you, Dad. I really did. But Mom, she said it would destroy you, destroy our family. She said it was just a phase, that it would be over soon. Kevin placed a hand on Zach's shoulder, squeezing gently. This isn't your fault, Zach. None of it. Your mother and Noelle made their choices. We're going to get through this together, okay? Zach nodded, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. What happens now? Kevin sighed, looking at the pile of documents on the table. Now, we protect ourselves. I'm going to call my lawyer again, get the ball rolling on the divorce. We might need to talk to the police about the embezzlement. But first, I need you to do something for me. Anything, Dad. I need you to write down everything you remember. Dates, times, conversations you overheard. Anything that might be important. Can you do that for me? Zach nodded, a determined look crossing his face. I can do that. I want to help. Kevin managed a small smile. That's my boy. Now, why don't you go upstairs and get started on that? I need to make a few phone calls. As Zach headed upstairs, Kevin pulled out his cell phone. He dialed a number he knew by heart, waiting as it rang. Stanley? It's Kevin. We need to talk. There's been a situation, and it might affect the company. Can you meet me at the office in an hour? After hanging up, Kevin took a deep breath. He looked around the kitchen, at the remnants of his birthday party still scattered about. It felt like a lifetime ago. Upstairs, he could hear Miranda moving around, presumably packing her things. Part of him wanted to confront her again, to demand answers, to make her feel even a fraction of the pain he was feeling. But he knew it would be pointless. She had made her choice. Instead, he focused on what needed to be done. He gathered the financial records he'd been reviewing, placing them carefully in his briefcase. Then, he headed upstairs to change. As he passed the guest room, he saw Miranda stuffing clothes into a suitcase. She looked up as he paused in the doorway, her eyes red and puffy. Kevin, please, she started, her voice trembling. Can't we talk about this? 17 years of marriage has to count for something. Kevin felt a surge of anger, but he pushed it down. When he spoke, his voice was cold and controlled. You're right, Miranda. 17 years does count for something. It counts for alimony, and it counts for how the judge will view your infidelity and embezzlement. Beyond that, it means nothing. Miranda flinched as if he'd struck her. You don't mean that. We can work this out. I made a mistake. I know that. But I love you, Kevin. I love our family. Kevin laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Love? Is that what you call fucking our neighbor and stealing from my company? Save your lies, Miranda. I'm not interested. He turned to leave, but Miranda's voice stopped him. What about Zach? Are you going to turn his mother into a criminal? Is that what's best for him? Kevin felt his control slipping. He spun around, his eyes blazing. Don't you dare use Zach as a shield. You didn't think about what was best for him when you were screwing Noelle in our bed. You didn't think about him when you were embezzling money that could have sent him to college. You don't get to play the concerned mother now. Miranda recoiled, tears streaming down her face. But Kevin felt no sympathy. He'd cried his own tears last night, alone in the dark. Now, he was done crying. Now, he was angry. I'm going to the office, he said, his voice cold. I expect you to be gone when I get back. If you need more time, you can come back tomorrow when I'm at work. But as of now, you no longer live here. Without waiting for a response, Kevin turned and walked away. He stopped by Zach's room, knocking softly on the door. Come in, Zach called. Kevin opened the door to find his son sitting at his desk, scribbling furiously in a notebook. I'm heading to the office for a bit. Will you be okay here alone? Zach nodded, looking up from his writing. Yeah, Dad. I'll be fine. Are you okay? Kevin managed a small smile. I will be, son. We both will be. It's going to be tough for a while, but we'll get through it. Zach stood up and hugged his father tightly. Kevin returned the embrace, feeling a lump form in his throat. When they pulled apart, both their eyes were moist. I'll be back soon, Kevin said, ruffling Zach's hair. Call me if you need anything, okay? As Kevin drove to the office, his mind was already working on the next steps. He'd need to secure the company's finances, make sure Miranda couldn't access any more funds. He'd need to start documenting everything for the divorce proceedings. And he'd need to figure out how to move forward, how to rebuild his life from the ashes of betrayal. It wouldn't be easy, But Kevin Sawyer had never shied away from hard work. He'd built his career with his own two hands, climbing the ranks from apprentice to foreman to project manager. He'd faced this challenge the same way he faced every other, head-on, with determination and grit. As he pulled into the parking lot of his office building, Kevin took a deep breath. The man who walked out of this car would not be the same one who had celebrated his birthday yesterday. That man was gone, along with the life he thought he had. But in his place stood someone stronger. Someone who wouldn't be fooled again. Someone who would fight for what was his, and for the future he and Zach deserved. Kevin grabbed his briefcase, squared his shoulders, and walked into the building. The battle was just beginning. Kevin Sawyer stepped onto the construction site, the familiar smell of sawdust and concrete filling his nostrils. It was a welcome distraction from the chaos of his personal life. Here, he was in control. Here, he knew exactly what needed to be done. Or so he thought. "Sawyer," a voice called out. Kevin turned to see Stanley Humphrey, the company owner, striding towards him. The older man's face was etched with worry lines. "We've got a problem," Stanley said without preamble. "Bullock Construction is suing us. They're claiming we stole their proprietary designs for the Riverside project." Kevin felt his stomach drop. The Riverside project was their biggest contract to date. If they lost it, the company would be in serious trouble. And as project manager, the blame would fall squarely on his shoulders. "That's impossible," Kevin said, his mind racing. "We developed those designs in-house. I oversaw the entire process myself." Stanley nodded grimly. "I know that, and you know that. But Bullock's got some pretty convincing evidence. If we can't disprove their claims, we're looking at a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. And that's not even considering the damage to our reputation." Kevin's jaw clenched. He'd be damned if he'd let this company, his company, go down because of some baseless accusation. "Give me everything we've got on Bullock in this lawsuit. I'll figure this out." As Stanley walked away, Kevin's phone buzzed. A text from Miranda. "We need to talk about the divorce, and the house, and Zach." Kevin ignored the message without responding. He had bigger problems to deal with right now. Over the next few days, Kevin threw himself into researching Bullock Construction and their CEO, Francisco Bullock. He pored over financial reports, court records, and industry gossip. Slowly, a picture began to emerge. Francisco Bullock was a man with a history of frivolous lawsuits, to be exact. Kevin found case after case where Bullock had sued smaller companies, usually settling out of court for substantial sums. It was a pattern, a business strategy disguised as legal action. As Kevin dug deeper, he uncovered something even more interesting. Bullock Construction was in financial trouble. Their last few projects had gone over budget, and they were bleeding money. This lawsuit wasn't just about stealing designs. It was a desperate attempt to stay afloat. Kevin smiled grimly as he compiled his findings. Bullock had picked the wrong company to mess with this time. Meanwhile, across town, Miranda and Noel were having a very different conversation. "We need to do something," Miranda hissed, pacing back and forth in Noel's small apartment. "Kevin's going to take everything in the divorce. We need to weaken his position." Noel lounged on the couch, looking unconcerned. "Relax, babe. We've got the embezzlement stuff on our side. He can't prove anything without implicating himself." Miranda shot him a withering look. "You don't know Kevin like I do. He's not going to back down. We need to hit him where it hurts." At work, a slow smile spread across Noel's face. "I might have an idea about that." The next day, Miranda walked into Sawyer Construction's main office, her head held high. She ignored the whispers and stares from the employees who knew her as Kevin's wife. Ex-wife, she reminded herself. "I need to speak with Stanley Humphrey," she told the receptionist. "It's urgent." 10 minutes later, she was seated across from Stanley, her face a mask of concern. "I'm worried about Kevin," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "He's been unstable lately, drinking too much, flying into rages." Stanley's brow furrowed. "That doesn't sound like Kevin." Miranda leaned forward, her eyes wide. "I know. That's why I'm so concerned. I think the stress of the job might be getting to him. I'm afraid he might do something drastic." As Miranda spun her tale, she could see doubt creeping into Stanley's eyes. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Across town, Noel was putting his own plan into action. He'd managed to get his hands on a set of keys to the construction site office. Now, under cover of darkness, he slipped inside. His target was Kevin's computer. If he could plant some incriminating documents, maybe some correspondence with Bullock Construction, it would be enough to cast doubt on Kevin's innocence in the lawsuit. Noel booted up the computer, his fingers flying over the keyboard. But as he tried to access Kevin's files, he hit a wall. Extra security measures, ones he hadn't anticipated. After several failed attempts, he was forced to retreat, empty-handed and frustrated. What Noel didn't know was that Kevin had been one step ahead. Anticipating some kind of sabotage, he'd beefed up the security on all his work devices. As Noel left the office, a silent alert pinged on Kevin's phone, along with a crystal-clear image from the hidden camera he'd installed. Kevin allowed himself a small smile. Let them play their games. He was gathering all the evidence he needed. The next week, Kevin stood before the company's legal team, his research spread out before him. "Gentlemen," he began, "I think you'll find this interesting." Over the next hour, Kevin laid out everything he'd uncovered about Francisco Bullock and his company. The history of frivolous lawsuits, the financial troubles, the desperate need for a big payout. "But here's the kicker," Kevin said, pulling out a final document. "I've uncovered evidence of some highly unethical practices at Bullock Construction. Corners cut on safety measures, substandard materials used to save costs. If this information were to come to light, it would destroy their reputation in the industry." The lead lawyer leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. "This is excellent work, Kevin. With this, we can not only defend against their lawsuit, but potentially countersue for defamation." As Kevin left the meeting, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He'd done it. He'd saved the company, and his job along with it. But his relief was short-lived. As he walked to his car, he saw a familiar figure lurking near the entrance. Noel. Kevin's fists clenched at his sides, but he forced himself to remain calm. He wouldn't give Noel the satisfaction of seeing him lose control. "What are you doing here?" Kevin asked, his voice cold. Noel smirked, but Kevin could see the nervousness in his eyes. "Just passing by. Thought I'd say hello to an old friend." "We're not friends," Kevin said flatly. "And if I catch you anywhere near this site again, I'll have you arrested for trespassing." Noel's smirk faltered. "You can't prove anything, Sawyer. You've got nothing on us." Kevin leaned in close, his voice a low growl. "I've got more than you know. Now get out of here before I decide to share some of that information with the police." As Noel scurried away, Kevin allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. He was winning this battle on all fronts. The next day, the news broke. Francisco Bullock had been arrested on charges of fraud and safety violations. Sawyer Construction's countersuit had brought all of Bullock's misdeeds to light. In the aftermath, Kevin found himself in Stanley's office once again. But this time, the older man was smiling. "You've done an incredible job, Kevin," Stanley said. "You saved this company from a potentially ruinous lawsuit, and in the process, you've shown leadership skills I didn't know you had." Kevin nodded, accepting the praise. "Thank you, sir. I was just doing my job." Stanley leaned forward, his expression serious. "I think it's time we discussed your future with this company. How would you feel about taking on more responsibility? Say, as vice president of operations?" Kevin felt a surge of pride. This was what he'd been working towards for years. "I'd be honored, sir." As Kevin left Stanley's office, his new title ringing in his ears, he couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. He'd faced challenges on all fronts, personal and professional, and he'd come out on top. But as he drove home, his thoughts turned to Miranda and Noel. They'd been quiet lately, too quiet. Kevin knew them well enough to know they wouldn't give up easily. They'd be planning something desperate. Well, let them try, Kevin thought. He was ready for whatever they might throw at him next. As he pulled into his driveway, Kevin saw Zach sitting on the front porch, waiting for him. The sight of his son brought a genuine smile to his face. No matter what happened with Miranda and Noel, no matter what challenges he faced at work, he had Zach. And that was what really mattered. Kevin got out of the car, ready to share his good news with his son. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. Across town, in Noel's dingy apartment, Miranda paced back and forth, her face a mask of fury. "Did you see the news?" she spat. "That bastard not only beat the lawsuit, but he got Francisco arrested. And now he's been promoted." Noel lounged on the couch, his usual smirk replaced by a scowl. "Calm down, babe. We'll figure something out." Miranda whirled on him, her eyes flashing. "Calm down? Calm down? We're losing everything, Noel. The money, the house, my son. And you want me to calm down?" Noel stood up, grabbing Miranda's arms. "Listen to me. We're not done yet. We've still got one more card to play." Miranda looked at him, a mix of desperation and hope in her eyes. "What are you talking about?" Noel's grin was ugly. "We're going to make Kevin look like the bad guy. And I've got just the plan to do it." As Noel outlined his scheme, Miranda felt a chill run down her spine. It was risky, potentially dangerous. But what choice did they have? Kevin had outmaneuvered them at every turn. This was their last chance to turn the tables. "Okay," Miranda said finally. "Let's do it." As the sun set over the city, three people in different locations prepared for the battles to come. Kevin, confident but wary, ready to protect what was his. Miranda and Noel, desperate and dangerous, willing to risk everything on one final gambit. The stage was set for a showdown that would change all their lives forever. Noel Morrison paced the dingy living room of his apartment, his face a mask of desperation. The cheap laminate flooring creaked under his feet with each pass. Miranda sat on the threadbare couch, her once perfect manicure now chipped and ragged. They'd been plotting for hours, fueled by cheap whiskey and cheaper promises. "It's gotta be perfect," Noel muttered. "One slip up and we're done." Miranda nodded, her eyes hard. "Kevin's smart. He'll be expecting something." Noel's lips curled into a sneer. "Yeah, well, he won't be expecting this. You remember the plan?" "Of course I remember," Miranda snapped. "I'm not an idiot." Noel stopped pacing and fixed her with a hard stare. "Could have fooled me. If you hadn't been so careless with the embezzlement." "Oh, don't you dare pin this all on me," Miranda hissed, standing up. "You were more than happy to take the money when it was rolling in." Noel waved her off. "Water under the bridge. We need to focus on what's next." The plan was simple, in theory. Frame Kevin for assault. Noel would rough himself up, Miranda would corroborate the story, and Kevin would find himself on the wrong side of the law. With a criminal record, his cushy new job would vanish, along with any leverage in the divorce proceedings. "You sure you can sell this?" Noel asked, eyeing Miranda skeptically. Miranda's laugh was bitter. "Please. I've been acting the part of the loving wife for years. This'll be a cakewalk." What they didn't know was that Kevin was already 10 steps ahead. Kevin Sawyer sat in his home office, surrounded by screens. He'd installed hidden cameras throughout the house weeks ago, a precaution born of years dealing with shady contractors and even shadier lawyers. Now, those cameras were his ace in the hole. He watched as Noel stumbled into view, Miranda close behind. They were arguing, their voices muffled but their body language clear. Kevin leaned closer, his eyes narrowing as he saw Noel begin to hit himself, creating bruises that would later be blamed on Kevin. "Amateurs," Kevin muttered, a grim smile playing on his lips. He picked up his phone and dialed a familiar number. "Jack? It's Kevin. I think it's time to put our plan into action." The next day, Kevin was unsurprised to find 2 police officers at his door. What did surprise him was the sight of Zach, standing behind them, his young face a mixture of confusion and fear. "Mr. Sawyer," one of the officers said, his voice professionally neutral. "We need to ask you some questions about an alleged assault." Kevin nodded, stepping aside to let them in. "Of course, officers. I've been expecting you." As they settled in the living room, Kevin caught Zach's eye. "It's okay, son," he said softly. "This will all be over soon." The questioning was brief but intense. The officers relayed Noel's story of a violent confrontation, corroborated by Miranda's tearful testimony. Kevin listened in silence, his face impassive. "Mr. Sawyer," the lead officer said, "Mr. Morrison claims you attacked him last night, unprovoked. He has the injuries to back up his story, and your wife has corroborated his account. Do you have anything to say about these allegations?" Kevin leaned forward, his voice calm. Officers, I appreciate you doing your job, but I think there's something you need to see. He led them to his office, Zach trailing behind. With a few keystrokes, the screens came to life, showing crystal-clear footage of Noelle and Miranda's clumsy attempt at deception. The officers watched in stunned silence. When the video ended, the lead officer turned to Kevin. Mr. Sawyer, I think we owe you an apology. Kevin waved it off. No need. You were doing your job. But I would like to press charges against Mr. Morrison and my soon-to-be ex-wife for filing a false report. As the officers left, promising to return with warrants, Zach looked at his father with a mixture of awe and respect. Dad, that was... How did you know? Kevin put a hand on his son's shoulder. I've learned to always be prepared, Zach, especially when dealing with people like your mother and Noelle. But the cameras, isn't that like invasion of privacy or something? Kevin sighed. It's my house, son, and given what they were planning, I'd say it was justified. Sometimes you have to fight fire with fire. Across town, Miranda and Noelle were celebrating their perceived victory with cheap champagne when the doorbell rang. Their smiles faded as they opened the door to find not only the police but Kevin himself, flanked by his lawyer. What's going on? Miranda demanded, her voice shrill. Kevin's smile was cold. Justice, Miranda. Pure and simple. As the officers read Miranda and Noelle their rights, Kevin's lawyer stepped forward, producing a thick folder. Mr. Sawyer has some things he'd like to discuss with you both. Inside, Kevin laid out the evidence methodically. The camera footage, bank statements showing the embezzled funds, emails detailing their plots and schemes. With each new piece of damning information, Miranda and Noelle seemed to shrink, their bravado evaporating. You've got nothing, Noelle sneered, but his voice lacked conviction. Kevin reached into his briefcase and pulled out a USB drive. This contains everything, he said calmly. Every transaction, every lie, every scheme. You have two choices. Confess and face the consequences, or I take this to the police. Miranda, who had been silent until now, suddenly broke down. Kevin, please, she sobbed. We can work this out. For Zach's sake. Kevin's eyes flashed with anger. Don't you dare use our son as a shield, Miranda. You lost that right when you chose to betray us both. But he needs his mother. Miranda wailed. He needs stability and honesty. Kevin shot back. Two things you seem incapable of providing. Noelle, seeing the writing on the wall, turned on Miranda. It was all her idea, he blurted. She came to me, said she was unhappy. I never meant for it to go this far. Miranda's sobs turned to shrieks of rage. You bastard. After everything we've been through, you're going to throw me under the bus? Enough. Kevin's voice cut through the chaos. You're both going down for this. The only question is how hard you want to fall. As Miranda and Noelle turned on each other, Kevin stood and nodded to the officers. I think we're done here, he said quietly. They're all yours. In the weeks that followed, the truth came to light in a very public way. Noelle was arrested for embezzlement, his reputation in the community shattered beyond repair. Miranda, facing the consequences of her actions, lost any chance at custody of Zach and forfeited all claims to Kevin's assets. Kevin found himself in a meeting with Stanley Humphrey, the company owner. Stanley leaned back in his chair, a pleased expression on his face. Kevin, I've got to hand it to you, Stanley said. The way you handled the Bullock lawsuit was impressive enough, but the grace you've shown under personal pressure, that's the kind of strength we need in our top leadership. Kevin raised an eyebrow. What are you saying, Stanley? I'm saying, how would you like to be our new chief operations officer? Corner office, substantial pay raise, the works. Kevin felt a surge of pride, but kept his expression neutral. I'd be honored, Stanley. Thank you for the opportunity. As he left Stanley's office, Kevin allowed himself a small smile. He'd weathered the storm, both personal and professional, and come out stronger for it. But for all his professional success, it was his personal life that gave Kevin the most satisfaction. He and Zach grew closer than ever, bonding over shared meals and long talks on the porch of their home. One evening, as they sat watching the sunset, Zach turned to his father. Dad, I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner about Mom and Noel. Kevin put a hand on his son's shoulder, squeezing gently. You did the right thing in the end, Zach. That's what matters. Zach was quiet for a moment, then asked, Do you think Mom will ever change? Kevin sighed, choosing his words carefully. I don't know, son. People can change, but they have to want to. Your mother. She's got a lot to work through. Are you angry with her? Kevin thought about it. I was at first. Now, I'm just disappointed. But that's not something you need to worry about. Your job is to focus on school, on your friends, on growing up to be the best man you can be. Zach nodded, then surprised Kevin by leaning in for a hug. Thanks, Dad, for everything. As the last rays of sunlight painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, Kevin allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. He had faced betrayal with strength, overcome challenges with intelligence, and emerged not just victorious, but respected and whole. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be tough conversations with Zach, therapy sessions to work through the trauma of the past months. The divorce proceedings would drag on, a constant reminder of what had been lost. But as Kevin sat there with his son, he felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in years. He had survived the storm and come out stronger on the other side. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he would face them head-on, just as he always had. The next morning, Kevin woke early, his mind already racing with plans for the day ahead. As he made coffee, Zach stumbled into the kitchen, bleary-eyed and yawning. Morning, champ, Kevin said, sliding a plate of toast across the counter. Sleep okay? Zach shrugged. I guess. Had some weird dreams. Kevin nodded sympathetically. Want to talk about it? For a moment, it looked like Zach might refuse. Then, haltingly, he began to speak. I dreamed about Mom. She was crying, saying she was sorry. But then she turned into this monster. And Noel was there, laughing. Kevin set down his coffee cup, giving Zach his full attention. That sounds pretty intense. How did it make you feel? Scared. Angry. I don't know. Zach pushed his toast around the plate. Dad, do you think I'll ever be able to trust Mom again? Kevin took a deep breath. This was the kind of conversation he'd been preparing for, but it still wasn't easy. That's up to you, Zach. Trust is earned, not given. If your mom wants to rebuild that trust, she'll have to work at it. But you're not obligated to give her that chance if you're not ready. Zach nodded slowly. I think I need some time. Is that okay? Of course it is, Kevin said firmly. You take all the time you need. And remember, I'm always here if you want to talk. As Zach headed off to school, Kevin felt a mixture of pride and sadness. His son was growing up faster than he'd ever imagined, forced to confront adult realities far too soon. But he was handling it with a maturity that amazed Kevin. Later that day, Kevin sat in his new corner office, reviewing quarterly reports. A knock at the door interrupted his concentration. Come in, he called. To his surprise, it was Miranda who entered. She looked different, thinner, paler, with dark circles under her eyes. The confident, polished woman he'd married was nowhere to be seen. Kevin, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I need to talk to you. Kevin leaned back in his chair, his face impassive. I thought my lawyer made it clear. Any communication needs to go through him. Miranda nodded, wringing her hands. I know. But this isn't about the divorce or anything legal. It's about Zach. Despite himself, Kevin felt a flicker of concern. What about Zach? I want to see him, Miranda said quickly, as if afraid she'd lose her nerve. I know I don't have any right to ask, but he's my son, Kevin. I miss him. Kevin was quiet for a long moment, studying the woman before him. Finally, he spoke. You're right. You don't have any right to ask. But Zach is old enough to make his own decisions. If he wants to see you, I won't stand in the way. Miranda's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, Kevin. I know I don't deserve. You're right. Kevin cut her off, his voice hard. You don't. But this isn't about you, or me. It's about what's best for Zach. I'll talk to him, see how he feels. That's the best I can offer. Miranda nodded, looking both grateful and ashamed. As she turned to leave, Kevin called out, Miranda? She paused at the door, Looking back, get help, Kevin said simply. For Zach's sake, if not your own. After she left, Kevin sat back in his chair, lost in thought. He'd meant what he said. This was Zach's decision to make. But he couldn't help feeling a mix of emotions. Anger at Miranda's audacity, concern for Zach's well-being, and, buried deep beneath it all, a tiny flicker of something that might have been hope. Not for reconciliation. That ship had long since sailed. But for healing. For all of them. As the day drew to a close, Kevin packed up his things and headed home. The house was quiet when he arrived, Zach not yet back from his after-school activities. Kevin used the time to start dinner, falling into the familiar rhythm of chopping vegetables and seasoning meat. When Zach arrived, they sat down to eat, sharing stories about their day. Kevin waited until they were nearly finished before broaching the subject of Miranda's visit. "Your mom came to see me today," he said carefully, watching Zach's reaction. Zach's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "Oh," he said quietly. What did she want?" Kevin took a deep breath. "She wants to see you. But I told her it's your decision. You don't have to if you're not ready." Zach was quiet for a long moment, pushing food around his plate. Finally, he looked up. "Can I think about it?" "Of course," Kevin said, relief evident in his voice. "Take all the time you need. There's no rush." Later that night, as Kevin lay in bed, he reflected on the day's events. The challenges weren't over, far from it. But for the first time in months, he felt like they were moving forward instead of just treading water. Whatever came next, he and Zach would face it together. And that, Kevin realized, was all that really mattered.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comment section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy the story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.